and welcome to the Courtenay podcast. My guest today is returning. It is Patrick Wood. He is the leading expert on technocracy. He is an author, and it is always a treat to have a conversation with him. So I'm sure today will be no exception. And I was just telling him we're in the process of putting together a roundtable that will probably be in, I guess, about 6 weeks, no, maybe longer, 2 months from now. That will be with Ian Davis and David Hughes. And I have a show with Ian scheduled next week, and we've done a show with David. So this should be a truly mind-blowing roundtable discussion. And we were also discussing that he is working on a book. They are doing a collaboration. So hopefully that will be ready by then. If not, though, it'll be close to it. So we'll hear more about that. Patrick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing just great. Thank you.
You're welcome. So there is no shortage of material to discuss today. Unfortunately, I wish they would slow down a little bit, but yeah, it seems like they are really racing in. I know a lot of people were really I don't know what the word is, but they were very, maybe not the people on the left, but I think a lot of people were really thinking they could take a sigh of relief and thinking that Trump was going to be maybe a savior of some sorts, at least give some reprieve. And it looks like we're up against a potential tyranny that could be unlike anything even possibly conceivable, the comparison to anything we've experienced in the past with this looming technocracy stuff. And I don't know, I can't speak to, I don't have a personal relationship with Trump, so I don't know how much he knows, how much he's, wittingly ushering this in, but he is surrounded by a lot of these, as we were talking before we started, these, dark enlightenment, neo-reactionary figures, and he's certainly surrounded by technocracy directly in the administration. So what are your thoughts on what's going on right now?
Well, hopium goes a long way, doesn't it? When people get infected with it, and the populist movement in general had high expectations what Trump would do, and there certainly was no talk before the election about turning the government over to technocrats. This was not on the table. No. I predicted it, but that we see it in living color now that the technocrats have moved in, and they're not going to go at this. They're as stubborn as the illegals are, who were embedded, for instance, in the hotels in New York City, and they didn't want to leave. You couldn't hardly pry them out.
Well, even if they left, the smart contracts, once they're underway, there's no turning back on that. So
I know. I look at this whole thing, the advent of technocracy at this point. These people have been undercover for 40, 50 years. They didn't want to show their face. In the 1970s, for instance, you didn't want to. They would not show their face. They got wind of us along the way. Of course, they didn't want to debate with us anymore after 2 or 3 interviews where we just absolutely crucified them. Yeah. But they've been hidden all these years, developing their infrastructure. They've kept their nose clean, so to politically. Mm-hmm. And they've operated through all of the administrations. Doesn't matter if it's Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, right wing, left wing, it doesn't matter. These people have served themselves, and they saw what was coming, I'm sure, about it. And now that the technology, especially AI, has caught up with them, now they think they have a clear shot to take over, basically. So all of a sudden, they're surfacing all over the place. The people like Peter Thiel, he's the guy that sponsored J.D. Vance in the first place. He's one of the original tech bros. Yep. Elon Musk, David Sachs, Mark Andreessen, all these people. These are the original tech bros from Silicon Valley, all flavored by Peter Thiel, for sure. He was kind of the leader of the pack back in that day, and still is. He's kind of the philosopher of the movement, if you will.
And Christian too.
all of his cronies are in there. Sam Altman, they all have connections back to Peter Thiel.
Yes.
And, this is just stunning to me that they're showing their face for the first time. And I can guarantee you, nobody knew who these people were 6 months ago.
Yeah.
There's no way.
No.
If you said, well, who's David Sachs, for instance?
Right.
Crickets.
Right.
No way. Elon Musk, yeah, everybody knew who he was. Peter Thiel, nobody knew who he was.
Right.
How about, Curtis Yarvin?
What
No.
does he go by? Mobug? Mendicis? I can't even pronounce it. Mendacious?
I know.
Something. Yeah, Mobug?
Yeah,
something like that. I don't know. Strange.
This guy, he's one of the tech bros himself. He's very wealthy.
Yeah.
And he pictures himself to be kind of a philosopher.
Mm-hmm.
He's not, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, people listen to him, and he's spouting some stuff and, platitudes from history and stuff. But this guy's, he's had, I think, too many LSD trips along the way, honestly.
I know. I think you're absolutely right. And when you say he's a philosopher, I mean, we'll look at what philosophers he's inspired by. This is, Heidegger, Carl Schmitt. These are, pretty much like Gnostic philosophers. That's what they are. This is not philosophy in a traditional kind of what we would think of as being the foundation of the United States of American liberty. This is actually the inversion. This is very much, especially Heidegger. But
yes,
yeah, and they were both tied to the Nazi movement. This is not people who are championing liberty. So
exactly, and you mentioned the Nazi movement, the technocrats in the 30s and 40s. They were colored by the Nazi movement, if not directly associated with it. And that was evidenced by the three-piece gray suits that they wore. They looked like the SS.
Yes.
That's why they were banned in Canada, by the way. The Canadians look at them and say, you guys, you're scary people because you're marching around saluting each other with these gray suits, and all the women had their own version of that, the skirts and the three-piece, vests and stuff. It's really scary at that time. And so we know also that the technocracy movement hopped the pond to get right smack dab in the middle of Nazi Germany. And they had a huge following initially. Hitler outlawed the whole meeting business, and the organization itself didn't want the competition, I'm sure. But they entered into the Nazi regime to serve them. That wasn't making a political statement, but technocrats are like that. They don't care who they serve.
Right.
It doesn't matter. They have their own agenda, and they'll pursue that agenda at any cost. And this is exactly how they are today. They're apolitical in that sense.
Right. No, they're definitely apolitical. They'll use whichever movement will be a vehicle for them to rise.
Well, exactly. When I say political, the best example that I could give is when the Trilateral Commission took over the government under Jimmy Carter. Mm-hmm. Jimmy Carter was a member. His vice president was a member. Walter Mondale. There's all the suits on the stage. That's a Hollywood Bowl, by the way. You can't make this up, and all of the cabinet positions that Carter appointed, they're all members of the Trilateral Commission. They said all the time when we debated some of these people, said, well, why are you taking over the government? Well, we don't care about politics. They said that over and over again. I had to scratch my head. What the heck is going on here?
Right.
If they're not interested in politics, what are they doing in all these political positions?
Exactly.
Because all the cabinets appointed by the president, and then they have to be confirmed by the Senate. But when I figured this out for good, for sure, when I discovered the technocracy movement, they were never about the political system. The only reason they entered into politics in the first place is so they could get their hands on the economic machinery of the world
Right.
which was seated in Washington, D.C. The World Bank, all of the treaties and stuff that were, we were the engine of economic progress in the world. They wanted to have their hands on that because they said they were going to create a new international economic order. That was all over their literature back then. That was their tagline,
Right.
new international economic order. So it wasn't really about politics. It was about getting their hands on the engine of economic activity in the world. Well, you can see this today when these technocrats, they really don't care about politics per se.
Right.
It's not a political battle like you have left wing, right wing. These people simply want to have a platform to execute their technocracy. Period. End of subject. But at the time when they get enough powder in their cannon, they will blow away every political system that they can get their hands on at that point. But nothing's going to be safe, including America's political establishment, Senate, the House, all of the other people, the president, vice president, et cetera. All these people are going to get blown away in the end. I do believe.
I think we're already seeing it. So part of this philosophy, they use an acronym, RAGE, which is to retire
Yes.
all government employees. And so I think on the one hand, people are excited about that because we have this bloated apparatus and they do need to clean house. But unfortunately, that does pave the way for, the AI and the technocratic takeover.
Yes. Yes. Even liberal sources now get the picture that this is not about saving money. It's not about getting rid of people per se or downsizing, let's say.
Right.
It's about the establishment of AI in the government.
And they've made that pretty clear, right? Yeah, they
really, absolutely. Sam Altman 2 weeks ago came out. He announced a new product for OpenAI. You mentioned ChatGPT before. Everybody knows what that is at this point.
Yeah.
But OpenAI, they've created a special iteration of OpenAI software, and it's called OpenAI Gov, G-O-V. That's for government. It's only to be used by official government organizations. It's bonded into the Azure computing platform that Microsoft hosts for government affairs, and this is going to be released by the end of this month. We're getting close, aren't we? Right now, we're at the end of March.
Oh boy!
And so here comes AI. Now, this is not just, they're not giving the government employees a chatbot,
right,
just to type in questions, right? So you have all that blue at style, looks like. But here's the concept. They're saying, well, we're going to give you open access to OpenAI's platform to pump your sensitive data, upload it, in other words, into the cloud and manipulate it in the cloud in a safe and secure way, they say. And it's also going to train the AI platform as it goes. All of our information in the government now is going to be uploaded to the cloud to be processed by AI, especially OpenAI. I have to say, Sam Altman has kind of a tiff going with Elon Musk because Elon was a co-founder of OpenAI. Right. He has some differences, obviously, but this was kind of an upstage, I think, that he got there first with his product.
Right.
And that kind of leaves X and X.ai, whatever it is, Grok,
right,
out in the cold. But they're there, and at this point the gloves are coming off, and all of this data is going to be served into AI, and Katie, bar the door at that point when that happens.
Right.
Let me also say, he's offering it to state governments as well.
I'm seeing that. So all throughout the the United States, they're doing like meetings. I forgot what they're called, but it's some sort of like symposiums on digital governance. And
Yes.
I don't know if it's every single state, but I know my state, I think, is the end of May that they're doing it. So, and
Yeah.
I when I started looking through, I didn't go through all to check all 50 states, but I checked at least 10. So I'm sure this is,
Yes.
a rollout kind of thing.
Yes. This isn't, by the way, this is not going to be rolled out like IBM rolls out something.
Right. This is lightning speed.
When IBMers show up, they wear pinstripe suits, like investment bankers almost, right?
Right.
Their shoes are spit shine. They have a haircut. They have a $500 briefcase, and they show up and they sell you on whatever their products are, IBM products, right? When OpenAI shows up, they're going to be dressed in a sloppy T-shirt, sneakers, torn jeans, or whatever.
Man buns.
Exactly. But you'll know them. You'll know them by the fruits, nevertheless.
Yeah. And it's interesting, when you go back to when you were saying like you don't really think of them as philosophers, but I just keep going back to that because when you look at the roots of this movement, all of it is a very, very dark, but also very Aesopian type of philosophy, right? So, and you were talking about, but as the time goes on, the philosophies that are underpinning the technocratic movement are more overt. And that's exactly what you're seeing too. So it's like paralleling each other, right? You start off with, I wouldn't say you start off, but the Heideggers and the Schmitts are a little bit more cryptic, but then you move into the the accelerationists and the Nick Lands who literally write manifestos on like hyper racism, which we're seeing, right? And that's surrounding the Trump administration. We went from Black Lives Matter to now like they're openly Nazis and openly white supremacists. And that's not in a judgment or a label that's what they're calling themselves. They're proud of it. And this is all tied to this technocratic movement. I feel like the two of them, they're working together. And when you also, one more thing, and then I'll let you chime in on all this, but when you pointed out like the riff, it's always, I see this all the time in all these movements. I see it like in the Theosophical movement, you're seeing in the technocratic movement. I see it I've been studying this game B thing, and you see it there, but they always have these schisms, and it's so hard to know how much of it is, one, I think a lot of these schisms are ego battles, right? Like you said, now it leaves Grok kind of in the cold. But then I think sometimes they capitalize on these like schisms for Hegelian purposes so that they can have the synthesis. So, they have their exoteric public squabble, but then, they have the same telos. So together they have the same end goal. Of course they want to be the ringmaster of that end goal, but they do have a shared vision to some extent. So I don't know, chime in on any of that. Sorry.
No, exactly. Let's talk about that because we have, normally you would expect a loose cannon to get into government that does stupid things, policies, whatever. We had some, for instance, Secretary of State position. Often that's a rogue position. But you criticize the person implementing the policy. You don't say, well, it's the whole government, that's doing the same thing.
Right.
But at this point, you have a pack of people in our government who are marching to the same tune. And this is so dangerous at this point because this was not at all what the populist movement wanted. They wanted their back. They wanted their country back. Is what they wanted. Right. They wanted to shrink stuff, get some of the crud out, and shrink the government back. Maybe can some agencies, whatever, that really aren't needed in the first place. But that's a human resources problem. That could be done anytime they ever wanted to do it. They could.
Sure.
But now we have this pack of technocrats.
Yeah.
That's all you can call them.
Yeah.
They're even some of them say they're technocrats. But when these technocrats meet virtually or however they meet, you can see clearly they have their own agenda as a pack, as a group, to basically overthrow the government of the United States.
Right.
This is building up to this. I've said for years that the technocrat movement, technocracy at large, and the technocrat movement has always been anti-democratic, anti-government, anti-human as well. We see this all being wrapped in here to everything today. And when I talk about anti-government, they tried to get FDR to declare himself dictator in 1932 so that he could just dismiss Congress altogether and appoint all technocrats top to bottom in an org chart, just like a modern corporation.
Wow.
And well, and then the question is, if you could not have any property yourself, and they wanted all property to be moved and property rights to be removed from society altogether, ostensibly they were the ones that are going to own everything.
Right.
Well, isn't this the same thing? What Yarvin is saying at this point? The same warmed over tripe from 1930, and it's like some history is repeating here.
Yes. Only
and if they could do it today, if they had AI in 1933, we would be toast at this point.
Yes. Yeah. That's the biggest difference, is that the technology has caught up. So I want to talk a little bit about, you're talking about how they want to overthrow the American government, and that's pretty obvious. They've talked about, having, all these AI take over government positions, and it'll be so much more efficient, right? That's going to be the magistrate of Doge, which is right. I think that was a play on words, but there's also the AI World Society. And I think we have, again, I just think that they do play these things against each other. And we can talk about it in terms of the financial sector as well, because that's what it was, right? It's a takeover of the economic order. But you have the AI World Society, which is this vision for, and it's very theosophical, right? You see all the imagery and the global enlightenment mountain, and it is based on Michael Dukakis's book, Remaking the World Towards the Age of Global Enlightenment. He was the former governor of Massachusetts, and it's in conjunction with Boston Global Forum. But they talk about their vision for the UN Centennial, so 2045, which is when Ray Kurzweil says the singularity is nearer. And they talk about how in 2045 they're going to have this AI World Society. One of the things that they lay out is that, of course, all human governments will be supplanted by AI government. But now you're seeing there's a kind of this internal infrastructure of, dismantling all of these departments in the United States. And again, I don't know how much Trump is in on this, but it's what we're seeing, right? So, and they have people like Elon have openly said that we want AI will be so much more efficient. So it does look like that's what they're paving the way for. But I'm curious your thoughts on how much of this is, in synergy. Are they working together, or is this kind of like a battle of there's the I would say the globalist technocrats, and then there's the technocrats trying to work to overthrow nations individually and build like the technate, because the technate's not quite the same, right? There's still these regional areas. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on any of that?
Well, Curtis Yarvin has proposed, this is purely technocratic thought. He's not a wild card here. He's not coming up with anything new at all.
Sure.
But when he talks about that there will be SovCorps, he calls them. GovCorp, but SovCorp is better. It's sovereign corporations who will own the states.
Yep.
In other words, the state is not going to be owned by the people, so to speak, and it's not going to be um, it's not going to be democratically elected anything. But
Or
he talks
any
about every
constitutional republic. This is complete obliteration of the Constitution. So.
totally, yeah, exactly, total destruction. And when he talks about every square inch of land will be owned by the SovCorp, sovereign corporations. And that's not going to be all corporations, by the way. There will be some other corporations, but not SovCorps.
Yeah.
The SovCorp is going to be the head kahuna, if you will, over the region. And so basically, he envisions regions of the world set up. This kind of, in a sense, people in the Christian community are looking at this and they're saying, sounds like something in the Bible about Revelation and, 10 kingdoms of the world sort of thing, run by some dictator. Well, it's placed into it. But he's not specifically saying what each region is going to look like. But he said basically the technate that's been North American technate that's been defined here. Yeah. That's this is where what it's all about, I think. And interesting, I have to show this book again.
Yes.
This is the Technocracy study course from 1934.
Right.
See the map. Wow. See the map on the front.
Yes.
What do you have up here? Well, there's Greenland up there.
Greenland and Canada.
Canada. Yeah, Canada there. Mexico.
Of course.
Panama's down there.
Right.
Part of it, right?
Building the picture. I'm getting it. Yep, loud and clear. Yeah. It's the same map as the Club of Rome, too, right? They're regionalized.
Exactly. You're right. Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. This has been in the hopper at least since 1932. Yeah. Unbelievable. The same thing. And now they're just spitting it out. They're going to, the idea is to create a monarch for each region.
Or the cathedral will be the conglomerate of these monarchs, right?
Well,
Garvin calls it the cathedral. The cathedral will rule the state. Yeah.
I know. I don't know why exactly he chose that word. That's a religious word,
I know, but I think because Teal does it too. And what I'm seeing is they couch these things in this, like I call it Christianese, like legalese. It's Christianese, and it gives the veneer. And I think it's a way of luring people to misguide them. I think it's a deception. So people think they're following something. I mean, Peter Thiel keeps saying he's a Christian and that he's promoting, that all of this is backed by his Christian beliefs. And I think it's, I think it's ultimately it's deception. That's the only way I can read it. Yeah. But it is Christianese because they know that.
There's the map. There's the map right there that Club of Rome put up. Now, the only thing that's missing is Mexico.
Yes.
They're giving that to South America. But I'll tell you what, that's been on the map for a long time, that Mexico is going to be part of the North American Union plus Canada, plus Greenland.
Yes. Well, and Peter Thiel already has his Bitcoin city, so we can get to that in a bit. But, in the
exactly so. And we know that, Trump has said that we're going to take some of this federal land that the government owns, and we're going to create a competition
Freedom City
to create 10 super cities, the kind of freedom cities. They're going to be built from the ground up. These will be 15-minute cities, I'm sure, smart cities to the max.
There's ZEED, right? The ZEDEs, which is zones for economic employment, something. Yeah. ZED zone.
Yep. So he was the one that came out with that on his own, I think, the freedom cities. But, at this point, we shouldn't be, you don't need to be hard on Trump because he's just an actor.
I think, yeah.
He's just an actor. He's a pawn in this. He doesn't have a role to play. He's being scripted by these technocrats, I do believe.
I think so.
And they're the ones that are in charge. just imagine, you can see how this is anecdotal, I understand, but when you see Elon Musk roaming around the White House as Trump he sits in his office, in an Oval Office, you see Elon Musk, uh, standing behind him, um, looking around, acting like he owns the place.
Playing with his son.
Who's calling the shots here? It's not the president. I do not believe at this point. Trump, I think we're going to see in the end, Trump was just an actor.
Yep.
And he's just fulfilling his role. Now, here's the problem about opium is that all of the people in the MAGA movement, they were counting on this image of savior like Trump to deliver them from slavery, essentially, in the end. But they're going to be sadly mistaken when it all comes out that that he's just an actor along the way. So I don't think we should focus necessarily on Trump. Is he in it, and is he not in it? Is he aware? Is he brain dead? Whatever. It really doesn't matter, right? In the end of it, the technocrats are the story here.
Yep, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with that. And I don't know whether he knows or not, but it's irrelevant because ultimately he's really not.
It does. And I tell you what, there's no way that he could not understand what's going on. He's a smart guy. I'm sure he's that smart that he can figure out what's going on.
Well, I think, sorry. Well, what else are you going to say?
Well, I was going to say he was the guy, he was the president that instituted the opportunity zones in his first administration.
Right.
That was a huge thing. When I got a wind of that, and I started writing about it, Catherine Austin Fitts picked up on it immediately. She said, "Holy mackerel, this is it!" This whole business with opportunity zones. Well,
it's the zone for employment and economic development. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yes, I know most people never heard of the concept of opportunity zones, but the idea of was that the governors of each state could pick like underserved communities and define them like on a map, and they could declare themselves to be opportunity zones. And they have a special tax privileges at that point where oligarchs, especially the tech guys, the bros, they could sell their stocks and not incur any capital gains and pour all the proceeds into these underserved opportunity zones to develop smart cities in those opportunity zones with no repercussion that they're going to pay taxes.
Right.
It just, you couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. But, it was just a travesty of anything decent at that point that he would hand that to them.
Right.
But see that this was in his first early in his first administration. That tells you, if nothing else, he was complicit. He was already taking orders from somebody at that point. Right. And when I looked at the people who were associated with the legislation to the opportunity zones in the first place, they were all technocrats from Silicon Valley.
Right.
There you go. That was their legislation. Trump signed it. He sponsored it in the first place, but he signed it. There you go.
And then
now they're everywhere.
Yeah, and then he gave his version a very clever marketing branding called Freedom Cities. Yeah. It sounds great. Freedom Cities. But they are the same thing. Yes.
Those freedom cities, if they ever get built, which I doubt, but if they are, they'll turn into ghost cities, just like they did in China.
Yeah,
China tried this thing. Mm-hmm. China tried Freedom City. They built them from the ground up. Beautiful cities, by the way. Sure. Huge cities. Yeah. You look at them from space, you see the spoke and the wheel. Design, I mean, just with parks and high rises and apartment houses and, just all city services. And everybody's wondering who's going to live in these things. They thought they were going to get the farmers to live in them. That didn't work out at all. But the cities today, they're in ruins all over China.
Wow.
Yeah, there you go. That's one right there.
Wow.
That's that. Yeah.
What happened?
I mean, no people would go there. They didn't want any part of it.
And
These peasants they couldn't find anybody to live there. So the windows are broken out in these high rises, and the weeds are there, and the trees have all died, and it's just incredible. That's why they call them ghost cities, because there's 95% occupancy.
Wow. So they couldn't force them even to.
No, they couldn't. Yeah.
Wow.
They were sure.
Yeah.
But, considering the stupidity of their one-child policy, first place,
right.
They didn't have anybody who's going to go. They wanted to move, at one point, 300 million farmers off their land to make factory farms.
Right.
And so they had to take eminent domain to kick all these farmers out. I think there was enough resistance probably that they couldn't do that, but that was the original plan in the press release that Beijing put out.
Wow.
That they're going to move them off the land and get into these smart cities. They're going to give them an apartment to live in, and maybe food or stipends. Maybe they're going to give them universal basic income.
Right. Right. Wow. That's amazing. I didn't know that failed. China. That's so. And how stupid that they thought of all people, the farmers would want to do that. I mean, the farmers live on their land.
No kidding. What is a farmer going to do in a high-rise building in a 500 square foot apartment?
Yeah. This doesn't make any sense at all. So with these opportunity zones, these freedoms, these smart city concepts, and what you were laying out with these gov corps, right? This is what I'm very concerned about, because I really think this is very imminent. Is that I'm hoping it's not. Hopefully we have some time, and I'm wrong in my concern. But what I'm seeing is that Trump put his executive order banning these CBDCs, which is great. I think they knew that at least this populist movement that is at large is not going to go for that. They have enough awareness of what a central bank digital currency might portend, and they're not interested in that kind of top-down centralized authority that's supranational. But my concern is that they're creating a lot of hype around these other digital currencies, and they're creating kind of this allure of that you're going to opt in. Basically, you're going to opt into your own tyranny, in my opinion. But it's this network state type of communities or communitarianism, and they're of course, the whole premise of the network state is dissolution of geographical nation states in favor of these cyber kinds of states that are, interconnected. And BitNation has already done this over a decade ago. They've already created one. But of course, Srinivasan has his whole network state community. And I'm just concerned that there's a lot of enthusiasm for some of these digital currencies, and people think that they're the bulwark to tyranny. I know a lot of people have argued with me about even Bitcoin, because they say, well, it's not a fiat currency, although they've already shown that they've hacked it. They've already shown that they can, that Trump is talking about making it a reserve, and that eradicates that whole concept right there. So, so what are your thoughts? And once they do that, if they get people in, I don't know why people have this thought that if it's a privatized, that somehow it's going to be more free. But if you need a digital ID to enter, if you need, they need all your biometric data, and now they can like use that data to remote control you. So, and I know when I say that, people say, "Oh, that sounds like crazy sci-fi stuff." But I've shown the technology, and I've shown all of the, we're really past the R&D stage in this stuff. And there's the AI World Society lays out the Internet of Nanobio things very clearly, and they talk about using 6G. And we've got hundreds of universities that are teaching people. We've got Purdue University's engineering department training people in the Internet of Bodies, and they say your body will be a smart home. So once they can lure people, or they can crash the dollar, or they can bloat the dollar to the point where it crashes, and force people onto these crypto types of currencies that people seem to be so excited about already. I feel like that's really, I don't know, that's where the network state has total power. So
there's a movement generally, technocracy at large. They want to privatize everything. That's how they get away from the government.
Right.
That's why there's a push right now for everything to be privatized.
Right.
First deregulated, and then privatized. So you're going to see a slew of things this year, especially, that are going to be in private hands in the end. Where it used to be a government function, now it's private function. Well, when Trump signed the executive order to ban our Fed from issuing CBCDs, digital currency, everybody got excited.
Right.
He's got them. No, he's going to really shove it down their throat, those nasty old central bankers anyway, There's no war here. I guarantee there's no war. But I just posted a great article today on technocracy.news that says the headline is "The Stablecoin Trap, the Backdoor to Total Financial Control." This is a privatized system. This is a privatized system.
Worried about. Yeah.
And, at this point, you can see, this was.
I'll have to read it. I haven't read this one yet. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Okay. So here's the setup. In Trump's first administration, he didn't want anything to do with crypto at all.
Right.
Big change. What happened to it? What did he see from then to now? Well, obviously, the technocrats rallied around him and said, if you want to be president, you have to commit to this. So one of his first appointments, at the hands, by the way, of Mark Andreessen, who was seated in the table when the president makes all these choices to put in like AI czar and a crypto czar.
Yeah.
Well, lo and behold, here comes a guy who's he's not going to be confirmed by the Senate. He's just an appointed guy to be the crypto and AI czar. None other than David Sachs, one of the most scurrilous technocrats that one of the billionaires. What's going on here? All of it. We need a crypto czar. Oh, what the heck does that mean? We need an AI czar, really? But this is the guy that's heading the team to implement stable coins in the United States for all transactions, and it's going to be a privatized solution. And it's not going to be from the perspective of the central bank, even though the central bank has charge over dollars.
Yeah.
Stable coins are going to have some type of a backdoor approach to dollars going forward. How they're going to blend it, I don't know, but that's not the point. The point is they're pushing like crazy for a crypto-based system to replace the concept of central bank digital currencies.
Yes.
Period. In fact, they just had, let's see, it was last week, they had the first roundtable, high-level meeting on crypto last week at the White House, where David Sachs was chaired the thing.
Of course.
Wow. Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah, and Tether is one of those stable coins. That Tether just took interest in Rumble. That's interesting. And
it is, yes.
Yeah, and then I think there was some ties with Goldman Sachs as well. Yeah, that's the strategic $775 million strategic investment. Yeah, I'm wondering what the strategy is. But
yeah, well, I'll tell you what, Tether is managed by Cantor Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're getting the bums rush. That's it.
Yeah, no, it's I'm very concerned about this whole push for the crypto, and people. I'm also concerned because it's very misleading to a lot of people. A lot of people see it; they're championing it as the freedom token, right?
Yes.
They think that this is the ticket to freedom from the government. You know, a lot of the anarchists and the freedom cheering people are very in favor of crypto, and I'm not saying that there isn't, some possibility that somebody could innovate something that really is decentralized as their buzzword that they love to use. But I keep reminding people that H.G. Wells said the conduit to the world brain would be decentralization, right? He was talking about of information, which we're seeing also, right? I think they're linked, but I think that people really have this notion that if it's decentralized, that means that it's you have sovereignty, that it's you have autonomy over it. But this digital sovereignty thing, I think, is kind of an oxymoron. I don't see how it's really possible. And they talk about peer-to-peer, and anybody who knows technology knows that's like the middle layer, that it has to be interoperable. So obviously, if it's interoperable, and they keep saying it's transparent, how can it be transparent and private simultaneously? That seems to be a little confusing to me.
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you familiar? And then there's Mark Carney, who now is the Prime Minister of Canada, and he wanted to create the synthetic hegemonic currency, right? As the kind of I guess, one of the other poles.
Yes. Here we have, somehow Carney is going to play into this whole thing, because
I think so.
Carney was first the chairman of, or the head of, the Bank of England. That's the largest central bank in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was in Canada's central bank for several years. Right. In other words, this guy's a central banker.
Yes.
I noted in my last book, Technocracy, The Evil Twins. I don't have a copy here. I should. Okay. The Evil Twins of Technocracy. Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you very much. There we go. Yes. I noted that there's been a shift in the makeup of the Trilateral Commission from starting in 1973 to today. We did a study back in that day to find out, well, how did the makeup of the who was driving everything? That's what we're trying to figure out. Sure. Well, we saw the bankers. We had several bankers at that point, like Chase Manhattan Bank and Morgan, Citicorp, companies like that. And maybe there's one central bank that has a member at that point. But I did the same study just a couple of years ago, just to see what would happen. Mm-hmm. It took me a couple of days to do it, but it wasn't hard. And all of a sudden, jumped off the page at me, there was hardly any representation from commercial banks. In other words, what popped out was, all of a sudden, the central banks had a premium membership role at the Trilateral Commission. In other words, they had come out of hiding themselves, and so they were the ones. People like Mark Carney, mm-hmm. and who was a member of the Trilateral Commission, right? And so I looked at that. I had to think about that for a bit, but it's plenty obvious to me that the central bank system is one of the principal drivers of everything that's going on right now in the world. These people have not rolled over for anybody. They're there. They're there in the background, and we see them now in Canada. And I just wonder. I want to see Trump, how he's going to handle Carney.
Yeah.
Carney's not your run of the mill buffoon,
Right.
like Trudeau was.
Right.
This guy's a hardcore globalist.
Yep.
Central banker, knucklehead. He wants to eat the world, and it's going to be interesting to see what he's going to do. If Trump is going to roll over, is he somehow Trump is going to get the Canada to join with the United States somehow? I don't know, but just the fact now he's our neighbor for a while.
Yeah.
That's really disturbing to me.
Very disturbing. Yeah. And so they're playing these tariff games. Do you think that that's related?
It seems to be. It really does seem to be. But again, is this all for show, or is this just theater, or is it substantive?
Right.
Most of the wars in the last century were started because of trade tariffs in the first place. So that we saw it in World War I, World War II as well. That what really pushed them over when goods don't flow, soldiers march. That's kind of the idea. Where goods don't flow, soldiers enter in, and you end up with a kinetic war. I'm not sure if that's where we're headed at this point, but I don't like it because this really ticks off the receiving nation like China and Mexico at this point, and Europe as well.
Sure.
So who knows? Who knows where it's going to end?
World War I, I feel like it was kind of the opposite. It was the, getting rid of the tariffs. It was the Tariff Act that then, ushered in the Federal Reserve and the income tax in order to fund the war. But they had to get rid of the tariffs in order to do that. And it was also to create the exportation of the manufacturing to create this, to benefit the East Indian Corporation at the time, British East Indian Corporation. Now it's for China, but, yeah. But yeah, I hope that's not where they're headed with all of that. So you said that you think it's, when you were tracking this, you were saying this is central bankers. So do you feel like it's a few families that are kind of waging all of this? Because are the technocrats tied to the central banks, and is it the same bloodlines? Or, I mean, we know Elon's.
I don't think it's a matter. I don't know that it's a matter of bloodlines per se at this point. Maybe, but when you have people like Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, arguably, he's probably going to be the first trillionaire. But maybe even by the end of the Trump administration.
Oh,
we're talking immense wealth.
Yes.
And are they tied in? Well, at this point, there's powerful forces in the world that have always been there. We know that, like with the central banking families that own the central bank system in the first place.
Sure.
They've always been there. They usually don't come out to play, so nobody really knows who they are.
Right.
But at this point, power is being exercised by these technocrats. That's the bottom line. The power is in the hands of the technocrats at this point, not anybody else. And when you see what the banks have already done with testing for or developing the network of central bank digital currencies, this was not the work of bankers per se. This was this was the work of some technocrats within the system who are making these these blockchain oriented currencies and other things for managing contracts and stuff like that. Recording assets. They call it the global ledger. Everything's going to be digitized and put in its place in assets, liabilities, income, expenses, that sort of thing.
Right.
So, we can see the overlap of technocracy, or excuse me, of technology.
Sure.
And are the technocrats using the central bankers at this point, or is it the other way around? I'm not really sure. You can't really call that right now.
Right.
But on a ground level, we certainly know